Welcome to the Time for Agape podcast, where we share stories of hope, healing, and transformation through Jesus Christ. And since our founding in 2019, our mission has been clear: to empower the church to love the LGBTQ+ community boldly, to equip the church with biblical truth about God's good design for sexuality, and to encourage the church to stand for the transforming power of Jesus Christ. We've seen God restore countless lives. We pray you encounter Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Time for Agape. We all need more agape in our lives. That's the Greek word for love, unconditional love, attachment love, and Jesus agape first. he first loved us and held out an opportunity to attach, and so we want to do that for the people that we minister. First is an inner healing ministry located in the Midwest, and we are in the midst of a conversation. This is part 2 of a series that we're doing on so-called conversion therapy. What is it? Why is it so contested? And certainly it's in the news again, post Supreme Court decision, Childs versus Salazar, where the Supreme Court upheld the free speech rights of therapists. Well, before I get any further, I want to bring on my co-hosts for the day, Darren, Mel, and Gracie Poole. Hey, guys.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. TGIF, it's good. It's good that it's Friday.
Yes, it is.
Amen.
Well, we have a very special guest today, someone who is a friend of the ministry, and we love him very much, Andrew Rodriguez, and he is a therapist out in, is it the Philadelphia area? Or
about an hour north of Philly, so yeah.
Hour north of Philly, okay, so coming in from Pennsylvania. How you doing today, Andrew?
Doing good. Glad to see you guys.
That's good to be with you again. We love what you're doing out in Pennsylvania, and you are a licensed therapist, correct?
Yeah, an LPC, licensed professional counselor.
Okay, and you specialize in something called reintegrative therapy. Is that how it's? Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. I'd love for you to tell us, just in general. I know it's there's a lot to it, but what is reintegrative therapy, and how can it help us?
Yeah, so reintegrative therapy is an approach for trauma and addictions. We use our brain's own natural mechanism of memory reconsolidation to work on getting to the emotional roots of our unwanted behaviors and what we call schemas, like core beliefs, emotional beliefs, and ways of coping. And by applying mainstream, evidence-based, supported memory reprocessing techniques, we can unlock these schemas or memories or neural networks so that the emotions, the beliefs, the behaviors that are connected to these experiences in our lives can be edited. And so that people can experience transformational breakthrough when it comes to things like addiction, unwanted sexual attractions, whether they're same-sex attraction or unwanted other types of attraction, fetishes, sexual addiction, porn addiction, gambling, other behavioral addictions. And it's a good framework just for how to process just other types of trauma as well. So we incorporate a variety of other memory and trauma reprocessing techniques. So it's a very integrative approach in and of itself.
It sounds amazing, and we love talking about the brain here on the show, and we know that God has made our brains in such a way that we can heal, and really it's the renewing of our mind, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I've had this question all day, and then we'll get into more of the conversion therapy stuff, but in a real broad strokes, kind of rudimentary way of explaining it, we know that when we experience trauma, the amygdala part of our brain recognizes that there's a threat. You have the fight, flight, freeze response. The hippocampus shuts down. You're not able to access some important information. And the prefrontal cortex, which is the identity center, we can't access it. We forget who we are. We don't have all the information. How does and of course, so many of the clients that I work with, and I know other people who have same-sex attractions, I mean, this is such a clear part of their history. There's been sexual trauma, and there's just they're probably still in flight, or freeze. That's probably never gone away for some of them, and they're disconnected from a sense of who they are. Do you see that in your work as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's regular.
Yeah.
That's the bread and butter of what we do, is helping clients just work on the anxiety, the shame that's surrounding the sexual feelings that they have, the attractions, the ways they're not really showing up in life in the ways they would like to. And as we're tracing things back, we're just being open and we're being curious with our process. I train my clients in just being curious and then compassionate toward themselves. And it's just, they have a way of auto-selecting. Just their brain knows what to bring up. So they just make their own connections. So I don't have to like impose a theory on clients. I don't have to, well, here's likely what caused this, and let's see if that's true for you. No, I just follow the protocol, which helps clients just make their own connections, leads them back to the memories that make sense, and we just work on what comes up. And oftentimes that is the case. There's usually some unmet need, like emotional need for, like, I use all these A words: attention, affection, approval, acceptance, admiration, affiliation. And when those needs are met, it creates this deficit and this drive to fulfill it. It's a craving. So the greater the deficit, the greater the desire. And so what clients tend to discover is that beneath their attraction or their behavior is really a legitimate need that they're really trying to pursue.
Excuse me.
Yep. Darren?
Yeah, Andrew, you're talking about the neural networks and the schemes and the base memories and reprocessing them and stuff. And it's been my lived experience coming out of a gay identity and gay behaviors. And, some described it as ego dystonic homosexuality, where I'm doing things that I don't want to do. And I never went through therapy and learned those words that you were saying that I just shared. I experienced my healing through Christ, and my experience when you talk about memory reprocessing and, the greater the deficit, the greater the desire. The Lord had walked me through recognizing my desires for brotherhood and relationship in the male tribe, if you will, and feeling rejected and being rejected and what have you. But the Lord providing me brotherhood in the church with my pastors and brothers, and demonstrating how to get my needs fulfilled in a safe way, in a godly way that was in alignment with my values and beliefs, as you were saying, exploring what are the beliefs. And so in the church, I kind of reprocessed my past. Like, wait a minute, all those things that I believed about myself, the Lord walked me through them. And I'm wondering, you're saying that reintegrative therapy and bringing in that reprocessing and having transformational breakthrough. Would this be a way to say it and then kind of expound on this? That the breakthrough, the transformative breakthrough is in the reprocessing is bringing more truths to the things that you didn't have in the past, where you had a trauma in the past of an event greater than your ability to handle it. You made assumptions and then moved on through life with those assumptions. That is this reprocessing and giving space and curiosity. Is that part of reprocessing, like integrating and finding your full self and going back and undoing some of that trauma? How's that? Like, how do you give me language? How do you talk about that?
Yeah, well, except you might be kind of jumping ahead to like what the end result is by talking about bringing in truths. Because one I think one mistake a lot of counselors or like coaches or like maybe pastoral counselors or just peers, when they try to help someone with these issues, is they try to bring in like some rationality into the whole process. Here's some things you should know. And that's oftentimes how they bring in scripture too. Well, don't you know that man is made for woman and woman for man? And that's a truth, yes. But there needs to be first understanding that this is an emotional and relational issue. And we don't change things that are at an emotional level through cognitive insight. Those are two different languages. So to resolve an emotional relational issue, you need a new emotional experience. And what brings about the transformative breakthroughs when I mentioned this mechanism that we have built in that God gave us, it's amazing, of memory reconsolidation. The first step is to activate the old, when I say schema, it means like the old emotional belief, implicit knowing. So to feel the feelings again that are associated with this neural network. So it has to be active, it has to be online. Then you bring in an experience that contradicts it. Sometimes that may be awareness of a truth that contradicts it, but it has to be a truth that's based off experience. So if it's just words, it's just like, okay, I know right now, like say we're just working on something else totally unrelated to sexuality, or at least not necessarily related. Like someone has a core belief that I'm unwanted. And so maybe the activating experience is that they're at a party and no one is talking to them at the moment. And so they suddenly feel that jolt of pain of, ooh, I'm all alone here in the middle of a party and no one's talking to me. Okay. And then the contradictory experience would be maybe them recalling another experience where they were wanted, where they were included, or maybe in that moment, an actual person coming in and they're present with them and they're showing interest in them. And that contradicts that core belief that's being activated. When that happens, when you're introduced to this disconfirming experience, it puts the brain in a labile state, meaning it's able to be changed. The emotions are able to be changed because it caused a prediction error. I predict when I'm in this situation that I will feel these emotions and then I will act this way to cope with it. But then I just experienced this instead. And your brain doesn't know what to do with it. So it unlocks the neural network and you can then incorporate the truths that come from this realization of this other experience. And then you repeat that process. You try to get that multiple times, and that's what helps produce more of a lasting effect. Whereas a lot of our other sort of counseling approaches are more focused on, well, we can't really change the feelings, so we just have to change the behaviors and the conscious thoughts. And that's necessary. That is necessary to some extent, especially when you're dealing with like a real deep like addiction. There's times where you just need to get some sobriety under your belt first, but that never really works on the root issue. And so you're highly prone to relapse. It requires a ton of willpower and a lot of support. You need a lot of accountability. And that just requires so much energy that can be discouraging. When you can incorporate these other elements, I would say in addition, it helps when you're doing a little bit of both. But this is where I say when people talk about reintegrative therapy as if it's just behavioral change, I just laugh at that because we're like the least behavioral approach that's out there. We're focused more on the emotions, getting to the root issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andrew, I just want to say you give me a lot to think about. And
Yeah.
I need to do some reprocessing about my past and take inventory about the number of emotional things that I was in and how that may have contributed to reprocessing and becoming fully integrated, that there was actually not only rational stuff and physical experiences in the real world in that sense, but the emotional side of things too, and how much being married to Rhoda and having brothers and being accepted and doing things emotionally where those feelings did come up, but then I had something, as you said, contradicted it. to know the counterfeit that I once had and what
Yes.
I have now, that there's a whole emotional side to this as well.
Yes, and that's the key that oftentimes was missing in a lot of our old ex-gay ministry approaches. Like, say, with guys, it's so often, well, they need same-sex connection, so just get them to join a men's group, and they just need to be mentored. And what we find is, as so long as they're in that group and they're getting that connection, they are doing pretty well. At least a lot of guys may have that story, but once that ends, they kind of revert back, and it's because you're not including the first element of that memory reconsolidation process of the old schema being activated. They were just stuffing any reminders of my temptations, and let me just work on getting my needs met. But it's the combination of being activated and then introducing the disconfirming experience. That's what has more of that transformative impact. So even if as you're like connecting with other guys, if at least while you're doing that, you're like, hold up, wait a second. I used to feel so scared of other men and being real around them. And if you can get back in touch with that emotion and then realize, oh, but this feels different. When you have at least that brings a new insight. So that way you can't unsee it. It brings a revelation that you can't just forget.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk for a little bit about so-called conversion therapy. We had a big win at the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
and well, as a therapist, Andrew, how did that feel? I mean, this is something we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah. My gosh, like 15 years here.
Yeah.
15, 16, or whatever. Yeah, 20 since 2012. So yeah, that's good news. I was quite happy. I'm happy about that. That's for sure. So now I held my breath a bit when they first announced it. Like I'm not one to get real enthusiastic right away because someone's like, all right, what does this actually mean? So I had to go to some other videos and a webinar to hear some legal analysis because all this legalese is really confusing. All this talk about strict scrutiny and I'm like, what does that mean? And I actually got a lot more assurance after I went to a webinar with one of the lawyers from Alliance Defending Freedom, explaining more what that all means. That just as like we have very strict requirements for making an exception to the First Amendment, like you can't go into a building and yell fire when there's no fire, or you can't make a threat against someone and just say, well, it's just free speech. That sort of strict scrutiny is what they're talking about when it comes to this, when they say that it is a violation of the client's and the therapist's First Amendment. So basically they're saying yes, even though they're bringing it back to the lower courts for the lower court to make the decision to apply strict scrutiny, it's essentially like a formality because the lower court is either going to do another hearing just reiterating what the Supreme Court has said, or they'll just make a new decision without having to do a whole new hearing. So that would essentially nullify the vast majority of the bans that are currently exist for so-called conversion therapy for minors. Now, it limits it, though, to interventions that just involve speech. So interventions that might involve particular behaviors are an open question. So that's something that remains to be seen how that'll be handled. And if like someone wants to make a bill that would ban aversive techniques for exploring change in sexuality and gender identity, go for it. We don't care. Like, if you want to call that conduct and you want to ban that sort of conduct, literally no one will oppose it. So
no one's doing it.
No one's doing it. No one cares. Like now, there might be some other techniques that are considered conduct and that aren't aversive. Yeah, I don't want to give them too much ideas, but then that calls in. If you're like, well, we're going to ban it for this issue, but not this. Well, if you're going to ban, like, say, using EMDR or other trauma reprocessing techniques that involve more than just speaking, you might use bilateral stimulation of some sort, and with or without a device. You don't necessarily need to use a device for bilateral stimulation. but that might be considered a form of conduct. That remains to be seen. But if you're going to say, well, you can't use that, well, then you're going to make the case. You have to make the case why you should be allowed to use it for anything then, not just for this issue. So, and we're all ready for that day in court too, because we got evidence that shows that it's helpful. So, like, go ahead. We've been itching for this day because we knew we had the science on our side.
Andrew, you just gave a good segue to my question. Is you say that we have the science on our side, but I've been reading the LGBT news, and as they're having meltdowns, they're saying only one judge got this whole thing right because it's about the conduct, and that speech is conduct when it's in a medical, and the science is on their side. That conversion therapy, 700,000 people have gone through this. And, everybody is suicidal and depressed because of this. And so they have, all the medical associations agree. So the 8 Supreme Court justices, they weren't following the science. They were putting the First Amendment before science. And what is regulation of therapy if not to know what is good or bad? So how do you address that? That's their argument that's coming down the pipe, as far as I can tell.
An argument out of ignorance. People who clearly haven't listened to the oral arguments back in October, who haven't read the amicus briefs from all the people who are on trial's side, sharing how the arguments from the Colorado and all the other bans, they conflate actual professional therapy with things like self-help, religious interventions, going to seminars, reading books, just prayer, like all these things that aren't actual therapy. So they don't make distinctions in the so-called research that shows the harm. So there's only like really a couple studies, and the best one that was actually prospective was the Carolyn Pila and Phil Sutton study back in 2021 that measured clients, their well-being and their sexuality at the start of therapy and then as they proceeded. And they wanted to assess, is this actually harmful? And that you don't have other studies that actually assess them at the start. All the other studies that everyone claims prove harm, and those that also prove or claim proof of benefit, are pretty much all retrospective. So that's not the best research. The best research is to do an actual experiment or quasi-experiment where you're assessing people at the start and then after the intervention. And the one that actually does that showed people improved in their well-being dramatically. They at the start of the study, their well-being was at a level of distress that was clinically significant. By just 6 months into it, their well-being was at a level that was just like a regular person who's well-adjusted walking down the street. And then as they proceeded, that was the first major observation, was that the well-being improved first and quickly. And because the reality is, the approaches that are the best are the ones that help reduce shame and anxiety. Are there approaches out there that could increase shame and anxiety? Yes. So I'm not going to deny that one bit. I think if you just use a behavioral approach, that you just work on stuffing your feelings and you just bounce your eyes or you white knuckle it, I think that is harmful. And I'm very outspoken and vocal against those sort of approaches.
Yeah.
Even kind of punching right towards some people who are our allies. So you guys know how I stand on some issues.
We're right there with you.
And so I train my clients to look into their feelings and their behaviors. Yes, even their behaviors, even when they have a fall, even when they sin, to look into that with curiosity and compassion. You can learn from that still. We don't just, all right, you need to now just repent, just try harder next time. That's not helping them. That's just going to increase the shame and guilt. And I think that sort of approach, if you take that, leads more toward that side A and side B mentality where I just give up. I'm just going to embrace it because I'm just constantly worried about sinning or falling. And so that could exacerbate some, if there's pre-existing suicidal ideation. Anyway, I could go on and on about techniques here. But yeah, the research that the opposition uses, it does not make the necessary distinctions for us to really rule out, are all approaches causing harm, or there are particular ones. And if they don't do that, then their so-called research has very little value. So, like, you could talk about therapy just in general. There's growing increased interest in outcome data for therapy just in general, for things like depression and anxiety. And what they're finding is that 40% of clients coming in to work on depression experience no benefit. They actually get worse, or just they stay just as bad.
So that's,
If you
would you
were
call it a
told,
baseline for therapy? That's just kind
yeah,
of like across
if
all
you're
therapy.
if you're told that that's the odds of getting better, like, and you're going to apply that same level of scrutiny when it comes to so-called conversion therapy, well, then you would use that same argument to say, well, we just should outlaw therapy in general as a whole practice. It's not very
I didn't know
effective.
that.
The outcome data is not the greatest for therapy.
So therapy is a soft science. It doesn't mean that if you
Oh,
go through
yeah.
it, you're
Well,
going to get
therapy is not a
you're going to be
science.
better.
Psychology would be a soft science. Therapy is an application. But yes, yeah, it's the verdict is still out on whether therapy is helpful. So,
Well, and that speaks to we were just within a week of the Supreme Court decision, we were back testifying against new bills that are coming forth.
mhm.
And but it was the same conversation that we've been having for over a decade.
Yeah.
And as the LGBT lobby testified it over and over again, harmful and discredited practices. And we're going, okay, what are you talking about? Nobody's no, I've never seen a therapist with a jug of ammonia in the corner or an electric shock machine, uh, you know, just ready to go. None of that is happening.
I don't even know where to buy that stuff.
I know it's like what is this harmful
Conversion
discredited
therapists are us.
I know. And the really funny thing is here in Minnesota, they introduced a ban or where they would insurance companies couldn't bill. And then we're going, and so the question got asked, is there even a code for conversion therapy? Well, no, there's not a code for it. Well, what therapist would even use that code?
Yeah. I'm treating on whatever the root issue is. I'm working on trauma, I'm working on anxiety, OCD. Yeah, some things may not have a diagnosis, but I'm working on whatever the client wants to work on, and I'm using mainstream psychotherapy. What has to be very clear to people when they're trying to ban so-called conversion therapy, they're not banning a particular practice. They're banning a client's goal. Clients are coming with a particular goal. They want to at least explore their potential for change in their sexuality or gender identity issues. When we say we're banning conversion therapy, they're not banning a particular therapeutic approach. They're banning a client's goal, because all therapists I know are just using mainstream psychotherapy approaches. I'm not doing anything bizarre. It's not something
What they're
exotic.
selling with conversion therapy is that you, the therapist, are out there to do something to your clients, or that parents are taking their kids to have this thing pushed on them.
Yeah.
But there's no therapists out there that have set the goal for the client other than the parents. And guys, I could just say that the stuff that I'm reading from the arguments that are coming, what are we going to do next with the conversion therapy thing, is they're coming after parental rights.
Oh yeah.
And that the children have rights and the parents are harming the children. And so when we start getting into that category, this is more leverage than just talking about LGBT issues. This brings it up a whole new level when it comes to, I mean, the LGBT talk about conversion, so-called parental rights,
Yeah.
and one of the constitution, some institution that called themselves a constitutional something or other that I just read yesterday, they're saying, well, this conversion therapy brings up the fact that the kids don't have their rights. and that the parents get to decide their care. And
Mhm.
what about the kids' rights? And that's a really interesting question that we got to examine. This whole conversion therapy thing is a whole lot bigger than
Yeah.
just same-sex attraction. It is a big movement that really hits at the core of our freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom to determine your own goals in life and having your own identity. Which ones can you or cannot choose? Are we the ones who have internalized homophobia, and Andrew is harming people, and we're succumbing to the stigma of religion and not having our rights protected because all the experts say that we're in the wrong? There's a lot on the line here still.
Yeah, and that's where people need to make a distinction between what is clinically allowed and what is clinically appropriate. So, clinically allowed, yes, parents should be able to have their child come in to see a therapist if they believe that would be good for them, and their decision should overrule what the minor would like to do. That's allowed. And they should have that right, and we should protect that right. Now, what's clinically appropriate, me as a therapist, I don't want to work with an adolescent who doesn't want to be there. If I if the parents are bringing a child to see me and the child doesn't want to be there, they're resistant. Well, guess what? We're not working on the thing the parent wants to work on. We're working on what the child wants to work on. Or I'm just going to do family counseling and help them work on how to communicate and show love to each other. All right. I'm not going to be a proxy to the parent. And that is pretty standard in my field. I don't know other therapists who would be like, all right, yeah, parent wants you to work on your SSA or your gender identity, and that's what we're going to work on. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, no, I don't know a single therapist like that. They're going to work more with the family system, or just, all right, you don't want to work on that? I know your mom and dad want you to work on this, but, it's really up to you. What do you want to discuss? This is your time. And they work on
And
that.
Andrew, that's built into your ethics and
Yeah.
certifications, isn't it? That whole concept.
Yeah.
It's across the board that the client drives it, not the therapist.
Yep.
That's
Now
my
it
understanding.
gets a little muddy when it comes to children because who's the client? Is it the child, or are the parents as interested parties? Are they the client? So I would say the identified patient would be the actual child. Um, or if there's a bit of a conflict between their interests, then I would just say the family is the client, and so I'm treating the family system. Like right now, I'm dealing with a situation with uh, a dad who he cannot connect to his son. He's an immigrant father, and his son is like very effeminate. Like when I first met him, I thought it was a girl at first. I didn't realize this was the client. And the dad does not know how to connect with him. And dad is like, well, he's disrespectful to me and all this. And I'm like, let's just work on communication. Like, what is your version of what respect means? And all this, and eventually dad's bringing up that he wants his son to sort of express himself more masculinely, and so I had to confront the dad in the session, like, you are trying to change him externally to try to make him match what you think would be appropriate for a boy, and it doesn't work that way. And he's like, but doesn't it, like, if he acts like a boy then he'll become more like a masculine boy? Like, that is not how this works, man. Like, you got to work on the internal. Like, you got to build your bond with your son. He does not feel loved by you. I like, work on that. Like, so, like, that's what I'm doing. I'm not there being like, yeah, all right, let's now get your son to act the way you want him to act. That's ridiculous. I don't know a single therapist in my field, at least not anyone who's well regarded in the ex-gay world, or the reparative therapy, reintegrative therapy, change allowing therapy, whatever words you want to use for us. I don't know anyone who would act like a proxy for the parents and try to force a child or coerce them. That's the last thing I want.
Yeah, and that's always been our policy here at Agape First. If you are being forced to be here, we don't want you here. And and I'll sit down with them and I'll say, hey, we're not here to change you. We don't have a magic wand. There's we don't have a little spell book in our drawer. That's not why we're here. And you know, maybe you just want to explore a relationship with you. There's no formula for this. And there's been some success there with just starting with, let's connect you to God. Let's just put everything else on the shelf for right now. And I years ago I had a client. He came in, said, "I'm a gay man. I don't believe change is possible, uh, but I have a problem with pornography. Will you help me?" Absolutely, I'll help you. Because I knew the underlying issues were the same. And I said,
Yeah.
we'll table the whole gay thing about it. And we didn't even talk about the porn thing really. We talked about deeper things, right? And all of what we're talking about today. And it wasn't long before God got a hold of him in a really, really powerful way, and ended up renouncing his homosexuality, getting married. He's got 3 kids. They're doing great, and this is many years later. So yeah, I think we just have to be open to whatever door the Lord might be opening and working with somebody. Certainly, it all starts with, we want people to connect to Jesus, and we want people to make Jesus their Lord and Savior. Well, we are coming to the end of our time. I want to do one round of just final thoughts. So we'll go Darren, Gracie, and Andrew. We'll give you the last word. Darren.
Yeah, Andrew, I just want to say thank you. It's been a great learning experience. I mean, I've known you for many years, but just in this time, learning about allowed and appropriate and the emotional side of things, not just the behavior and the cognitive, that it's a whole integrative thing of being curious and safe, and just being in that space is where healing is. And thank you for the work that you do, and the influence that you bring to this community. You just, in sharing that story with the dad and stuff, you're really setting it clear that no, this is not about behavior management and an agenda of a parent, but
Mhm.
that across the board, and you being on the board of the Alliance for Therapeutic Choice and Scientific Integrity, that the peers that you have and the work that you're doing is wise enough to know when a parent has an agenda, and that
Yeah.
people are actually safe with you and those in your sphere of peers. And I'm really glad to hear that today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Andrew. It's been a joy. I'm still learning. I feel like I'm always learning, but like it's always good to like learn new things. And for me, you just gave me a whole different picture of like what it means to dig out the roots of our sin and to renew our minds. It just gave me different words. Maybe I'll just pull up this podcast and show people, be like, I don't know how to say it right, but Andrew can. But I just always stick with digging out the roots and renewing our mind.
That works.
That's what the Bible has to tell us, but you have this really cool way of saying it, very like, here, let me help you this way. And so it just gave a really great picture, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks.
Andrew, final thoughts.
Yeah, I just put a video out on this in anticipation of an op-ed for the Christian Post that just came out yesterday. So my latest video is just on my reflections on the Kaylee Childs Supreme Court decision. And the main thing I was trying to communicate there is just, I hope what this whole decision will do, at least for good faith people, is to open up this conversation again. For too long, we've been having just a narrative being posed on us that exploring change in sexuality and gender identity is harmful in and of itself. That doesn't matter what approach you take, it's harmful. And I'm like, I agree. There are some harmful approaches. There are some least helpful approaches. But let's have the discussion about what those ones are and which ones are potentially helpful and actually have evidence of being helpful. And so obviously I'm promoting reintegrative therapy, but I know there's other approaches, not just reintegrative therapy, that can be very helpful. So every case is going to be different. Some people will take to reintegrative therapy, others, they need a different approach, and that's fine. what we call safety, sexual attraction, fluidity, exploration, and therapy is broad enough to include any sort of mainstream therapy approach. And there are ethical guidelines for practicing that. Let's have that conversation. And if you want to learn the type of therapy I do, I'll just plug reintegrativetherapy.com. If you want to be trained in reintegrative therapy, I'm your guy. I'm the one who does the trainings. So right now I'm in the middle of a class. I'm teaching 16 therapists, our biggest group yet. And I'm making it a hybrid course so that we can start training more people right away. We'll have videos ready to go. And so we got a wait list of therapists who want to be trained. So I'm glad to see there's therapists who want to learn how to do this, because to me, what I'm teaching in that course is kind of like what I taught you guys here. I expound on that so much more. And because I really want the most effective and ethical approaches being out there. That's what I'm passionate about.
Praise the Lord. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew, for your work. It's really good work. And we want to just bless that. And yeah, we want to promote it as well. So thanks for being with us today. I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll be back next week with another special guest. We have Matthew Greck coming on the show next week. Yeah, we're so excited. Post his big court win. And so we'll get to talk to him about that next week. Well, that's our show for the day. We would direct you to our website, agapefirstministries.org. And if you have the heart to give and the means to do so, we're all U.S.-based. Support us through the website. We also have a YouTube channel, Agape First Ministries Media. That's on YouTube, and you can follow us on Facebook. We have a special event coming up next week. Check out our website, our Transforming Joy event next Saturday. All the details are on the website and right there in front of you. April 25th, 5:30 to 8:30. It's going to be a great time. We've got a real fun speaker coming in as well. All right, that's our show. I want to thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with more Time for Agape.
Have a great Friday, everyone.
Have a great
Thank
week.
you guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.